California's gold is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
California's Gold is brought to you by Ford, with a world of new ideas that make being out on the road more fun and more economical. Like Sync, the hands-free communication and entertainment system from Microsoft. It lets you order up practically anything you want to hear just by asking. And turn-by-turn navigation gets you exactly where you want to go. Ford hopes you enjoy traveling through California with Huell Hauser, perhaps in one of our remarkable new products.
Juan Cabrillo, one of the world's greatest explorers. And then look right over here. I don't know about the world. I know it's one of California's greatest views. We're standing up here on the point of Point Loma looking out at San Diego Bay. There's Coronado Island, San Diego itself off in the distance. I'm standing here with, introduce yourself to everybody, Ray.
Maritime Museum of San Diego.
Okay, you're the head guy over there.
I seem to be, yes.
All right, now, it's no coincidence that where we're standing is in such juxtaposition with this beautiful statue of Cabrillo. What connects Cabrillo to this spot in San Diego?
Well, Juan Cabrillo led the first expedition of Europeans into what is now the west coast of the United States, the waters of the west coast of the United States. And in September of 1542, they sailed into this bay right here.
Now let's get this straight. This was the first European expedition into what is today the western coast of California.
You've got it, that's correct.
1542, that's a long time ago.
Long time before the Pilgrims set foot, on Plymouth Rock. Long time before
1620.
1620, Jamestown 1607, this was 1542.
So there was a lot going on the west coast before it happened on the east coast. I don't think most people know that.
Most people don't know that. American history was influenced by the Pacific world in similar ways to the way it was influenced by the Atlantic world.
Okay, we have sketches, because there were no photographs in 1542.
Right.
We have sketches of, and there were 3 ships. Where would they have docked?
Well, in most cases, the wind comes from out of the bay, so they would have sailed into the bay, tacked into the bay as best they could, and probably anchored. There were no docks.
Not docked, they would have dropped anchor.
They would have dropped anchor on the shelf that you see extending from that narrow spit of land. We call that Ballast Point. There's some shallow water there, and that's likely where they would have anchored.
Now, I say there were 3 because a lot of the depictions, a lot of the drawings show 1 or 2 ships. How did we come to the conclusion that there were actually 3?
Well, it's not entirely clear that the smallest one was a standalone ship or whether it was towed behind one of the other 2. There were 3 vessels, and they did operate somewhat independently, but one of them might almost be called a boat rather than a ship.
But they traveled together.
They did, and they each had different attributes.
Now, why were they here? Why did they come into San Diego Bay?
Well, they were trying to complete Columbus's objective. If you recall, Columbus was trying to get to China when he sailed across the Atlantic and bumped into the Americas. And pretty soon it was obvious you couldn't go over the top of the Americas. You couldn't get on around the bottom. That was very dangerous, and there was no way through. There was no Panama Canal. So the Spanish began to colonize the Americas, including the west coast of New Spain, which we call Mexico, and of Peru. And they were looking to complete that project by establishing a route that went from the west coast of Mexico all the way to China.
So wait a minute, they would build their ships on the western coast of Mexico because it was so treacherous going around the Cape of Good Horn.
Absolutely.
And then they would sail north, and what did they think was going to happen when they sailed north?
Well, of course, they didn't know until they sailed into here, but at one point they hoped that the coast would tend westward about the latitude of Santa Barbara or so, and it would just go westward all the way to China at a very temperate latitude, and that they'd be able to pioneer a coastal route to China and back.
They thought they were going to follow the coast of what was California all the way to China.
Well, they hoped they might. They didn't know, but that was what they were hoping for.
Well, that didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
There's a Navy cruiser coming into the entrance of San Diego Bay today. Wonder back in 1542, when they saw land, when they dropped anchor here, where did they think they were?
Well, I think they thought they were on the way to where they were going, which was China, you know. But it didn't have a name until they gave it one.
There were no maps.
There were no maps. And so that left it open, and they gave the name of this place San Miguel.
So they didn't call it San Diego.
No, didn't get called that until 1602.
So it was San Miguel, and looking out at the city today, I mean, millions of people live here. When you think there was absolutely nothing here.
Well, not quite nothing. There were people living here then.
Native Americans.
Native Americans who had lived here for thousands of years, and they live here still. So they kind of provide the continuity to this story.
But no buildings, no... Was Coronado Island here?
That North Island was here. It looked a bit different than it does now, but that was most definitely here.
Wow, it is so easy to stand here. Actually, it's easy and hard at the same time. To stand here, look out at this, and go back in time to 1542 when they saw land and pulled into what they called San Miguel Harbor. What happened to the Cabrillo expedition? He died on that expedition.
Well, he died. Yeah, he died at the end of the year, and the expedition continued. They continued to try to find a route to China by sailing out into the Pacific, and of course they were never able to sail far enough to do that.
What happened to the ships?
Well, the ships themselves returned back to New Spain,
which was on the western coast of Mexico.
So they returned, and the account of the voyage made it into the record. And then the largest of the ships, the San Salvador, the flagship, made one more trading voyage to Peru, and then she disappears after that.
So one of the ships disappeared. What happened to the other two? Well, they disappeared as well.
They drop out of the record. We don't know what happened to them.
Well, that really takes us back, and I think for many people watching this right now, opens up a new part of history that we didn't even know about, that Europeans were here on the coast of California as early as 1542.
If you think about it, this is one of the places where America began. Just like Plymouth Rock, just like Jamestown, America also began here by virtue of this expedition.
Well, that was a long time ago. A lot has happened since 1542. That expedition was definitely an eye-opener in many ways and deserves its place in history. Even though that expedition happened long ago, there's something else happening in San Diego right down there today that is not only historic, interesting, colorful, ambitious. Wouldn't you use all those words?
Scary also.
A little scary. That's what we're here to cover. Let's take a look out here, Cameron. As we look out at San Diego Bay, we are here to look at this new project, this scary, new, adventuresome project that is truly very much a part of California's gold. Okay, we have left Point Loma with that beautiful panoramic view of San Diego. We've come about 5 miles down to the shore itself in San Diego. The name of this place is
Spanish Landing,
which is very appropriate. Now, you call the project that you all are working on, I called it adventuresome, historic, creative. You called it...
Well, I call it scary.
Scary, whatever the name for it. What is the project that you all are working on now?
Well, the ship we mentioned, the flagship of Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, named the San Salvador, has been imagined by Californians for generations as the origin story ship, like the Mayflower.
1542.
1542, and we're finally deciding to build it. That's the project.
You are building a replica of that original 1542 ship.
Near as we can make it, we are, yes, in full scale.
Is that why you call it scary?
That's one of the reasons, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's one thing to talk about the project, it's another. Look at this. Here's the project. Now, Ray, there are a million questions. First off, what did you do? Just get the plans down off the shelf and take a look and say this is what we want it to look like?
No, there were no plans in 1542. They didn't build ships to plans in those days. So we had to do a lot of forensic research, forensic style research into what this ship would have looked like.
So that's the scary part.
It is. That's the scary part. No one has built one of these for several hundred years. That's another part of it. So we really are embarking on an adventure here.
So you didn't really even know what it looked like. I've seen a scale model that you have here on the site that's the closest you can get to what it may have looked like.
Right, right. We have images of the period. We have shipbuilding treatises of the period. We have contracts on ships like this and how they were built. But this particular ship, as was all ships in this period, they weren't built to plans. So we had to basically conjure that from historical research.
And this ship, let's review what you've told us already, was not built in Europe. It was built on the western coast of Mexico. They built them in Mexico to come up so they wouldn't have to go around the Cape of Good Horn, which was so dangerous.
Well, they did. This particular ship was built in Guatemala, but the voyage departed from Mexico, but you're absolutely right. Shipbuilding was actually the first industrial activity of the New World. These were the most complicated things anyone was building in the Americas at that time.
Can we wade into this activity? I guess this is open to the public,
That's
right?
the idea, wade into it.
Okay, now it gets interested. We have waded in and we have hooked up with, your name is?
Bruce Heyman.
Okay, you're wearing a San Salvador shirt.
That's true.
Which
correct.
means you're an official with this project.
Well, I'm the project manager overseeing the building of the ship.
Okay, now Ray has already called it scary.
It can be.
But I mean,
it's a
scary
challenge.
because you really didn't have any blueprints.
Every day is a new experience.
So what are you doing? Are you building it kind of like they would have built it back then? What are you doing?
No, we're not building it like they would have built it. It's going to look like it would have back then, but we're actually building it so that it meets all the Coast Guard regulations and about 450 years of improvements in technology.
So this is a combination of the old and the new.
Correct.
This is the best of both.
Correct. Where Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo would have had rocks for builds, we actually get to use lead, which makes a much more stable boat.
Look at all this wood. Where did this wood come from?
All over the place. We got 10 different woods in the boat so far. The wood here on the frames is southern live oak. Very unique species, and that comes from Florida and Georgia. It has to grow close to the Atlantic or the Gulf Coast.
Wow, look at this. I'm overwhelmed at the size of this. Would this have been a big ship?
I think it would have been a reasonably big ship for that time period. Certainly would have been a very big ship for that time period on the Pacific coast.
How many crew were on this? Boy, I'm thinking of all these ship questions now.
Well, my understanding is there would have been on the order of 100 people living on
Wait
this
a minute.
boat.
100 people living on this ship?
Yeah, no flush toilets.
Boy, they were crowded in.
No idea of personal space.
Can we go up and look?
Yeah, just watch your head.
I know it's a hard hat area, and I'm not wearing a hard hat. I'm wearing a Maritime Museum cap, but that's okay. Oh, no, I don't need a hard hat. I'm fine. Oh, almost hit my head.
Watch your head there.
Okay, we're on board the ship. Let's talk to one of the ship builders. He's working on something that's heavy. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
This is serious work. Do you know what you're doing?
Moving some build stringers. Getting them ready to tie all these frames together.
Did you know anything about how to build a ship like this before you started?
No, I'm learning as I go.
So this is a new experience for you every day.
Yes, it is.
But it's got to be fun for you.
It's fantastic. It's a chance of a lifetime.
Now, some of the workers are paid and some of the workers are volunteer. You are a...
I'm an employee. Museum.
You're paid.
I'm paid, yes. I'm not a volunteer.
That means you know what you're doing, right?
Supposed to, yeah.
How? You don't have any experience building a ship like this.
No, I've been in the business 38 years.
So is building a ship like building a ship like building a ship, or is this one totally unique?
Well, it's got some different shapes. That's about the difference.
You got a piece of wood coming your way. Paid man wants to do a little bit of work here.
I'm not a paid man.
You're not a paid man?
No, I'm not.
Watch your step. You're a volunteer.
I'm a volunteer.
Well, does that mean there's a pecking order? Do you have to do work that the paid people don't?
There's definitely a pecking order. Sometimes I sweep a lot of floors.
Well, that's okay. It's got to be fun for you.
It is. It's a great experience.
Did you have any idea what you were getting into when you signed up to be a volunteer?
None at all. This is my first experience working on a ship.
Wow. Well, that's got to be fun for you to see the newcomers do it.
Every day is a new experience.
Yeah.
We train people every day. But we have a nice group of people that return.
So you all get along?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we get along great, especially if somebody brings bagels in the morning. That helps.
You've been with the Maritime Museum since?
94, 95.
So this is a unique experience here.
Very unique. Haven't built a ship like this in, what, 500 years?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be on board with it.
Wow. Do you think that you take as much pride in it as they must have taken in it when they built it back in 1540?
I think maybe a little bit more, because this is going to be with the museum and do education programs and the whole West Coast tour that he did, and hopefully I'll be able to go sailing with her on her maiden voyage. And
see, I don't think most people even know that Cabrillo was here, that any European was here in California in 1542.
No, I don't believe so, because there's so much East Coast and not so much West Coast, because it took a long time for people to get here.
But the Spanish were here in
1542.
Now here's the guy. Wait a minute, you look like you're just standing around.
No, Huell, I'm always busy. I'm cleaning up. That's
Clean up,
half the
because these
job.
sites get kind of messy, don't they?
Of course, always.
Do you think they've always been messy? Do you think they were messy back in 1542?
Yeah, but they just didn't clean up.
Well, go to work. Look at these guys over here. Now, fellas, this looks authentic back here. What are you working on?
This is a part of the main mast step.
And what are you doing? You're sanding it. Show us what you're doing here.
We're planing a groove in it.
Uh-huh.
And this is actually the bottom. This will fit on top of the keelson. This will lock into the keelson. The keelson is this wide, and this will sit on top of it and lock into it.
Wow, this is amazing. And what kind of wood? This is beautiful.
Sapelli.
Where is that from?
Sapelli's from, I think, Africa.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, most people haven't.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you know what is this?
It's a slick.
Is this old? Is this?
Yeah, it's his actually. It's pretty old.
It's older than me.
But it's not 1542.
No, this is probably, I'd say, 1900.
That's not very old compared to 1542.
Well, that's true.
It's all relative, though, isn't it?
All relative.
It's called a
slick.
It's called a slick. I'd never thought of this, but in order to build a ship, you have to have metal.
That's absolutely right. You've got to have iron, strapping, hinges, anything that was needed made out of metal, the smith had to make.
So you're following in a very historic tradition
here. Yes, this goes back thousands of years.
Are you making parts for the ship itself?
We will be making parts. Right now we're making tooling. So I've got a spike in here that I'm making right now.
Well, wait a minute. You don't know much more about how to make the metal parts of the ship than they do how to make the wood. It's all kind of by the seat of your pants.
That's the way it was done, and I guess we're carrying that tradition along as well.
Bruce, I know the progress on building this ship. It is a ship, right? It's not a boat.
I call it a boat, but it is a ship.
It's a ship. The progress of building this ship is slow and steady, but it literally started when you just put down the first piece of wood.
Well, actually, the first day of work we came here, this was a parking lot.
Just an empty parking lot.
An empty parking lot with lines on the pavement, and now we're building a ship here.
So it's literally taken shape over the past days, weeks, months, little by little, but each change involves a lot of very hard work.
Hard and very skilled. The shipwrights do a phenomenal job of taking straight pieces of wood and going around all the imperfections and making beautiful curved shapes that fit very tightly into place on the boat.
Would they have paid that much attention to building a ship back in the 1500s, do you think?
Oh, I think their craftsmanship was very important to them back then because, remember, they lived on this. And if it broke up underneath them, they were going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
So I think they paid a lot of attention to how well it goes together. I don't think they worried as much about does it last for 100 years, because they didn't last very long back then. 2 to 5 years.
Why didn't they last very long?
Because they'd crash, they'd sink, they'd break. Remember, there was no charts, there was no GPS, there was no weather forecast. So you didn't know where you were going, you were just going to go around the next bend. And if it was foggy, oh well.
This is the big saw that cuts the wood at an angle.
Not only does it cut the curve as he pushes it around, but we can also tilt this blade and this whole machine will spin back and forth.
All right,
so that we
fellas,
can
are
cut
you
that
ready?
angle.
We're ready.
Be careful now. Let's step out of the way, Bruce, so we can get a shot of what's happening. They're going to fire that saw up. Oh my gosh. Now, they didn't have saws like this back then. What did they do?
No, they would have used hand saws. They probably would have had a pit and had 2 men in there, one down at the bottom of the pit, another one above, working the saw back and forth.
Boy, look at this. There's not many saws like this around, are there?
No, we guess that there might be 8 or 9 of these things operating or still operable in North America. They're disappearing fast.
But back in the day, and when we say the day, we mean the 1500s, this would have all been done
all by hand. All by hand. But he would have had maybe 100 or so people helping him build it. And on a typical day, we have 20 to 30.
Wow. Look at this. Well, this is not a how-to for people to find out how to build a ship like this, but this is a very interesting part of what's going on here.
You know, I find it just fascinating that we could find a saw that was built in 1920, and it was the key piece of equipment that we needed to be able to build this boat. And it still works beautifully, and it was made in 1920.
They're gathered around looking at this. Oh boy, look how shiny this wood is, Bruce.
That is gorgeous southern live oak. That's what it would look like if we were making furniture out of it instead of making a boat.
But this has been shellacked a lot, or what?
They're varnishing it.
Varnished?
Yes, and no, it wouldn't have been varnished back in 1542.
Is the whole ship going to be shiny like this?
No, it's not going to be to this level of shine.
Well, why is this all shined up?
It's protected.
Why is this all
I
shined
think this is going to be a display.
I got you. Look at this display. Look at this, Cameron. Boy, this is just absolutely beautiful. I have no idea what all those numbers mean.
When you saw the ship saw, the sawyer pays attention to these angles for cutting the bevel. This is an outer bevel, this is an under bevel. So the ship saw goes from 18 to 17.5 degrees to 17, 16.5.
This was complicated, wasn't it?
You know, I read a wooden ship is the most complicated thing man has built out of wood. And this is complicated.
We're going up.
We're going up.
You didn't tell me about this part of the adventure.
Oh, this is the fun part. Actually, coming down's the fun part.
What are we doing right now? I know we're on a big lift, a big crane here.
We're going up near the bow of San Salvador. We're going to be able to look down onto the boat so you can get a totally different perspective of it.
Now, they wouldn't have had this in 1542.
No, they didn't have any cranes or anything like that in 1542. It would have been a lot harder. They would have done it with a lot of manual labor.
Boy, let's get out of the way and let Cameron get over here a little bit. Cameron, this really gives you an idea of, number one, its location and proximity to the bay, but also this ship is going to get so much taller, so much higher.
When the ship is fully built, we will be still below the top deck right now. It'll be higher than those.
Than we are right now.
Than we are right now. People will be able to come up, walk on the deck, and get the same view that you and I are getting right now on this crane.
Are we to the top deck yet?
We are close. We are about, you and I would be standing on the top deck, leaning against the rail, looking over the water.
Whoa.
Is that amazing? Spanish galleons were really tall boats.
And then there's a mast on top of that.
There's a mast on top, and that'll take you 100 feet up, and there's a big couple of fighting tops, or we might call them crow's nests, that people will climb up to work the sail. So you'd be quite a ways up over the water when you're sailing this boat.
Okay, we're closing out this adventure, but the adventure continues because the San Salvador is scheduled to be launched when, Ray?
If it all goes well, end of 2013.
If you're on time, under budget, everybody shows up for work like they're supposed to.
All of those things, yeah.
The end of 2013.
That's correct.
The reason we're airing this now is because between now and then, for everyone who lives in San Diego or the San Diego area, Southern California, Central California, Northern California, who wants to visit San Diego, they're invited to come by and see this for themselves.
Absolutely. You won't have a chance to see anything like this again.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
More than that. No one's seen it for 400 years. So
now, what happens when people come by? Because I'm sure you've already had lots of looky-loos come by here.
Oh, we get lots of them. Some of them are actually back here working now, but we get asked a lot of questions.
Wait a minute, you don't put them to work.
Oh, we put them to work, sure. Look. Did you guys ask questions before you started?
So it's all about asking questions. I bet you get a lot of good questions.
Oh, a lot of questions. And nobody leaves without having asked some questions and gotten answers.
And you're right. This is a piece of California history.
Indeed.
In progress right now. It was here in 1542.
It was.
It's coming back now.
Absolutely.
This wonderful ship, boy, have we had a great adventure down here in San Diego. This wonderful ship, the San Salvador. It's coming back, and it's a fine example of California's gold. Thumbs up, everybody. They're the ones doing all the work. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and for those of you who want to share our California adventures with family and friends who live out of state, well, you can send them to our website at www.calgold.com, where they'll find a link to iTunes and an ever-increasing number of episodes they can watch for free. We're taking California's gold worldwide on the web.
Ford and the Ford dealers are proud to have brought you California's gold. Discover the new ideas we're developing to make being out on the road more enjoyable and more economical. Like EcoBoost, the turbocharged engine technology that gives you the power of a larger engine with surprising gas mileage. Ford is committed to making your traveling fun, economical, and environmentally responsible.